Welcome to Ashley On, your one-stop podcast where we talk about health and wellness, spirituality, and all things new. Stick around as we delve deep into innovations to support a better world.
Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to catch up with an old friend of the show, Guy Needler. Guy is an author and a medium and a very plugged in individual into the higher frequencies that are in our universe and our multiverse. And we're going to catch up with Guy on the state of our evolution as a species. Also talk about our frequency changes and the ascension processes happening in our world, and some tips on how to survive through this time of frequency change, and some practical pointers that you can get in terms of how to stay positive and just have continue to have patience as our ascension continues to unfold, when oftentimes it feels like we're taking steps back. So it's a great episode with Guy Needler, and hope that you enjoy the show. Thank you so much. As always, today's show is brought to you by Packed with Life Mushroom Tea. Delicious tea provides immune support, all-day decaf energy, and brain health. I drink this tea every day. I prefer it over ice as my way to enjoy it, but it's great hot tea as well. The fact that it has less caffeine than a cup of decaf coffee allows me to drink it at any point during the day. And it also is loaded with mushrooms and adaptogens that provide natural energy. So you don't really even miss the caffeine. In fact, you get a nice energy lift that doesn't provide any jitters. And like I said, it doesn't result in any sleep issues. So it's a great product. And you can get yours at packedwithlife.com or on Amazon. And hello, Guy. It's great to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm very busy, which may be a symptom of where we are with the world right now. It seems that a lot of people are trying to maintain their own frequency levels because the world is dropping down a bit further than expected. It is bottoming out though, but people are starting to notice there's a difference in the frequencies. So they're trying to help themselves to help others basically by maintaining their own frequency levels. So it's quite a busy time at the moment.
Well, let's talk more about that. Let's explain to our viewers or our listeners what you mean by that.
Well, we only have to look around the world right now, and you start to see that we've dropped down the frequency significantly with the amount of conflict we've got, with the amount of dissatisfaction that we've got, with economic crises, educational crises, health crises, it's conflict crises, the weather crises. We've got everything happening that is making us sit up and pay attention, because right now we've got all of the things that create a catastrophe at all the different levels. Not just a case of, well, we've got this conflict in one location and something else in another. We've got all three. We've got financial, we've got environmental, we've got conflict, we've got virus, we've got health-based conflict-based issues. So if you look at it all, we're getting a very big nudge to say, sort yourselves out, because you're going in the wrong direction. And basically we've gone the wrong direction, not because it's just a case of things happen. It's because we've taken our eye off the ball spiritually or metaphysically. We've become complacent, and this happened around 10 years ago. And as a result of that, we've just said, okay, we've reached our pinnacle. We hadn't. The job's always ongoing. There's no end to our need to progress up the frequencies. It's a never-ending cycle. So when we think about we've achieved something, we've got there, actually that's just one of the steps, and we have to keep going. But thinking we've got there creates complacency, because we start to think that we can, I can get away with that meditating today, and I can get away with just doing 10 or 15 minutes rather than half an hour. And so we start to erode away that which keeps us high frequency, and eventually because we start to lose our frequency, we start to slowly fall asleep. And because it's so gradual, we don't notice it. And then all of a sudden we're back into being the average immersed soul in a body, thinking that the body is us, and starting to get angry and annoyed and dissatisfied and aggressive and materialistic. And those are the signs, basically. I mean, basically, we're missing them.
Well, we had talked, we've talked a few times now, and I thank you again for being on the program again. I think, if I recall, we were on a positive trend when you and I first met. We were heading up, right?
Yeah. Well, basically, what happens is nothing is a straight line. Certainly in these lower frequencies, it's a bit of a sawtooth profile in reality, and it's the average that leads us to being either up or down. In terms of are we going up or are we going down? So we have little ups and little downs along the overall sort of median of progressing upwards. Well, right now we're sort of bottoming out. So but we still got this. That's still an average. So we are, locally going up and down the frequencies, and right now we're going down a little bit more than expected, and the result of which is the continued state of, shall I say, lack of ability to work together in a civilized way, in all in all ways, shapes and forms. There's still people who are working very hard to help people, be of service to people, but the overall population is really not behaving in a mature way.
I think I feel that even just in sometimes we just get overwhelmed, right? I mean, I go through periods of time where my meditation routine is spot on, and I'm doing it every day, and I'm really into it, and then I go through periods where it's just almost, you get exhausted because it's like, man, nothing's changing. Right. And so you get that negativity that kind of seeps in. Is that kind of what you're talking about too?
Well, there's a bit like that. We get, what's the word for it? We lose patience. And again, the loss of patience is a function of low frequency. So when we lose patience, we start to think, well, what's the point? And when we start to think, what's the point? We start to think, well, there's no point to it. Why should I continue? But that's part of the process we have to go through to come out the other side and maintain our higher frequencies. It is we have to continue on a daily basis to observe ourselves and observe how we interact with other individuals, specifically if we're surrounded by low frequency individuals or people who are challenging our high frequency. So we have to be careful how we respond. We have to be, always give a considered response and look at the way in which we respond to make sure it doesn't set us off into a downward spiral or an argument, for example. And sometimes that's really, really difficult. So, and it's constant hard work, without doubt. But if we can maintain a level of, shall we say, dedication to getting there, and recognize that the journey is not just lifelong, it's beyond lifelong, then we have to think, well, everything we're doing is beneficial. It's beneficial for me, it's beneficial for everybody around me, it's beneficial for the environment and how we interact with each other. It's just that right now things are difficult, so we're not seeing the rewards of our work. And that's the materialistic side. That's almost like the karmic side, where we need to see a reward. And that's the same with all spiritual work. And that's where the ego sneaks in, because the ego is a temporary personality that's created as a function of our incarnation. Because we're almost totally cut off because our communicative bandwidth is so poor when we're in the low frequencies that we can't possibly remain connected with our true energetic self, which is the higher self or the oversoul in Dolores Cannon terminology, or the Godhead in Hindu terminology. They all mean the same thing. So we lose communication with it because the communicative bandwidth is so low. It's like trying to use a telephone to try and communicate with the internet and get access to everything on the internet instantaneously. It just doesn't work. It's like, if you think about how difficult it was to use a computer back in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
It was just almost so inefficient it wasn't worth working with. But that's the same with our connectivity. So because we lose that level of connectivity, which is instantaneous, and the bandwidth is massive, to being nothingness, the sentience that's projected into the body starts to relate to the body over a long period. And so that's what creates the personality, which is the ego, basically. And so the ego knows inherently that its existence is limited to the length of time of the incarnation, or when we start to become a higher frequency. Because when we become higher frequency, our communicative bandwidth starts to increase. And it starts to increase, we start to understand who and what we are, and therefore the personality that we've developed since the incarnation starts to become minor in comparison. So it loses control. So it tries to maintain control by making us think, behave, and act in low frequency ways. So it creates things like doubt, confusion, anxiety, depression, disbelief, all of these different things to maintain its control. And when these things happen, it affects even the strongest spiritual, metaphysical individual. And so it's an ongoing process. We have to continue to be aware of what's happening to us and how we're thinking, behaving, acting. And so when this happens collectively, globally, the frequencies drop down quite quickly. And those souls who are striving really hard to maintain their frequencies are constantly bombarded by the low frequency thoughts, behaviors, and actions of other individuals around them. And because that drags the overall, or should I say, the localized frequencies of the environment they exist within. So that's why we go into some places and you can feel the oppression, or some places you can feel how wonderful it is because of the nature that's there. There's no mankind there, because even deserts are beautiful. Or if you go into places where people are working together and they're happy with how they're working together, and they're happy with their existence and how they're working with nature, and therefore the frequencies feel really high.
Yeah, I'm interested in, excuse me, what advice you might have for those of us who are, kind of just trying to keep up the good fight through this. I was just with some really close friends. I'm fortunate and be blessed with. There's 7 of us who have been friends since middle school, and we've stayed close all these years. And we were all together just this past weekend and catching up. And, I value these people's opinions, and they're almost like family or even brothers to me. And then they're very informed, right? Very smart people. And but they start talking about political solutions to some of these issues. And, I've kind of tuned out, over the last couple of years. I've turned off the TV. I've turned off the news. I've turned off, I've filtered my Google feed, to where I only try to get good news or news about sports, nothing about politics or what's happening in the world, and trying to focus on just my vibration and my contribution. But it's very difficult when these political conversations come up. And, I was reminded of, the rock band, The Police. They have a song called Spirits in the Material World. I heard that song yesterday, right? And, one of the lines in that song is I think it's one of the first lines is, "There is no political solution." So, this whole, concept of regression and the negative vibrations that are happening, man, it's really hard to have. I mean, when these conversations came up with my good friends, it's, how do I talk to them? Because it's hard. I want them to feel, hopeful, and I want them to feel, that there is a solution. But everybody's talking about, well, we got to get this person in the political role. We need to get this person, or this person's just worthless. And it's just exhausting, because I just don't see there being a political solution to what we're going through.
there isn't a political solution. I mean, one of the ways in which we can help ourselves is to find a good teacher. That was a question nearly asked the same question that was asked in Wednesday night's World Satsanga. You know, how do I maintain my frequencies? Well, get a good teacher, one that is also aware of what's happening and is working on themselves, and they will help you move upwards. But also, I mean, people go onto my website, they can go onto the which is www.beyondthesource.org, look for the About tab, scroll down to the press pack, scroll down again, you'll see the audio and the PDF for the chakra opening exercises. That helps, because opening the chakras brings more energy into our overall form, energizing the energy templates associated with each of the chakras, and lifts our frequencies. So that helps as well. Meditation helps. But if you've got friends that you've been around for years and you struggle with the communication or the dialogue we have with them, in terms of, you know, sometimes they end up being you know, gossipy, for example, where they're talking about people or saying this can't happen, that can't happen. It's okay to be in their presence, but don't engage in their rhetoric. You know, or you can offer an alternative viewpoint and say, well, you know, isn't this a function of it, how we are thinking, behaving, and acting? We don't need to have any political agendas, because political agendas are always resisted or approved, as the case may be.
No, they just create division, right?
Yeah. So it's what we need to do is say we need to change our own reality, change our event space into that to which we want it to be. And the way to do that is to do it, to live it. And in doing that, we create our own level of happiness or joy. And that may mean that there are times when we don't interact with those individuals who are basically indulging in low frequency thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And that also means that sometimes our friends disappear into the background because we move up the frequencies. But if you're happy to be with them every now and then, and not be too just be there because they're your friends, you don't have to engage in any of the conversation. You can just be there and think nice thoughts. And again, if you wanted to put in the odd higher thought process, you can do. It might be rejected, but don't worry. The seed is thrown into it then, and don't worry if they reject it out of hand, or maybe even make fun of you. I've had a whole lifetime of that. You just have to keep going and keep thinking, well, okay, I know this is what we've got to do. I know this is what I am. I know this is how I'm going to progress, and just do it. And you find that by being an example to others, some people cotton onto it. You know, some people understand it and work with it and use it as for their own, as a template for their own progression. And if it happens to one person in your lifetime, then you've been of service. But you might affect other people, in a very small way that's almost undiscernible. But that is enough to help again create their potential to move the frequencies themselves. So the thing is not to be discouraged, and to accept that, we can accept everybody, enemies alike. Your enemy is your friend, really, because they're just a soul in a body, struggling through the incarnation and being tripped up by or slipping up on the banana skin of karma. So it's a case of really just recognizing that this is the way forwards. We evolve in our own way, in our own speed, but being the example is what matters, and people will follow it. They might not say they're following it. There may be little bits and pieces that they're taking, and that's how it should be. As a long time ago, there's an old Aikido instructor of mine called Kazu Chiba, and in teaching Aikido, he used to say, you have to visit lots of instructors, and you have to be like a thief in the night. You have to take from them that which resonates with you, that part of the art, whether it's physical or metaphysical, to help you move on and progress. And it's the same with spiritual things. If you can show your shop window to people, you don't sell all your product to everybody, do you? One person might come in and buy this bit, somebody else might come in and buy that, and that's the way we should be with our progression, our spiritualization, our metaphysics, is be what we are, and then some people will take little bits and pieces and it'll help them in some way, but it might not be visible to us or even them. But the fact is that you're there doing what you're doing makes a difference. And doing this, this radio show right now, that adds to it. That all adds to, knocking away at the downward spiral and the frequencies and helping us to bottom out and then come out the other side.
Yeah, it does. And thank you for sharing that. And it's, I am remaining positive, right? I just am, it's a good chance to talk to you and kind of share some of these other observations that I'm having, because it's, I think there's a lot of people that are in our audience who are in the same boat. They're trying to maintain that high vibration, but it sometimes gets overwhelming when you're bombarded with the negativity or the focus on politics or rules and laws and that kind of stuff as our solutions, when we've been trying that for thousands of years and it hasn't worked, right? Like I saw, here in the United States, we have folks who take liberties to put signs in their yard sometimes, about politics or issues or whatever it may be. And I was walking the other day, and I'm enjoying a nice day outside, listening to the birds and focusing on my high vibration thoughts. And I come around the corner and I see this sign and it says, no, I can't remember. I'm going to paraphrase it basically, but it said thoughts and prayers, and it had a big X through it. And it said, now's the time for meaningful action, right? So it's basically saying, get rid of thoughts and prayers. They're worthless. It's time for us to make laws. And I'm assuming, because I don't watch the news and I try to tune out, but I pick up pieces of things that are happening because it's all over the place, right? And I'm assuming this is about gun violence here in the United States. And I'm assuming that we've probably faced a few different things recently, because I know, I've picked up bits and pieces. There has been some gun violence. There's always gun violence here. And it's always, highly publicized because it's a political, highly political issue. But, I see this and I'm just, I it felt like I got punched in the stomach when I saw that sign, right? Because thoughts and prayers are far more important than meaningful action that we might take to construct political laws or things, and retribution and negativity. But, when you talk to folks and try to engage, you often get that kind of sentiment coming back that's represented by that sign, and it really represents to me a lack of faith, no matter what your religious beliefs are, but a lack of faith in that there is something positive and good that does respond to thoughts and prayers, and that the collective thoughts and prayers make a huge difference in our society. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that looking at a sign like that would actually have not the effect that the sign writer would want, because it makes you think about it. Not just a case of, oh yes, let's go and find these people who walk into schools and cut people up with machetes or use guns and then kill about 23 children. That's not the right thing to do. It's about changing the thought process of people. And even though there's an X through the thoughts and prayers, the fact that it's there leaves an imprint on us. So it makes you think, oh yes, thoughts and prayers. I don't think he's got the right answer there, but we do need to have more thoughts and prayers, or more thoughts and positive thoughts. More meditation and those sort of things. So it creates a condition of, rather than going in one direction, it creates a dualistic response where some people will go, actually, I'll go with that. Yes, we should have more physical response. Where others would go, actually, no, that's wrong. This guy's got this wrong, or this woman's got this wrong. So it creates a dualistic approach where some people will do that, and some people will do that. Some people will go left, some people will go right, which in itself is positive, because it creates a condition where people who are neutral are now starting to think in one way or another. And therefore, having more people thinking the right way is better than having lots of people being neutral. So if you think of it in that way, that it creates the potential for choice, and choice creates different event spaces or different realities. And so
That's great.
So rather than leaving us in a neutral, stagnant position, it's actually invoking the potential for change, which is good. So so quite by accident, this chap has created a potential for us to be more positive than the negative side that he thinks is positive.
Well, I'm glad you shared that here, because as the rest of the story is, as I walked by the house again like the following day, and I happened to see I'm assuming it's one of the owners of the house. It was a woman, and she was outside. And my first instinct was an ego instinct, and it was, hey, I should say something to her in a nice way, but I should say something to her about, hey, we need both, right? We need thoughts and prayers. But I thought better of it, right? I thought, I don't want to engage that way. That's not going to get the right response. And so as I walked by, I gave her thoughts and prayers, right? to help them in that household, realize that there's a role for that. And then not only is there a role, it's the most important role that we could provide, so I think my reaction ultimately came back to what you're talking about, right? I got to the positive after going through that valley of negativity.
And that was the perfect response. But also, the difference in time, for example, between you first seeing that banner or sign and coming to the right conclusion is what I would call giving yourself time to have the considered response. And the considered response was, those poor souls, they need to have more good, love sent to them. Let's give them some more love, and good thoughts. And that's the right way.
Yeah, that's exactly where I came to. It took me a while, but that's exactly where I came to. By the time I came back by that sign was, man, those poor people, imagine what it must be like to believe that. How lonely that must feel.
Exactly. And they need help. But the thing is, you can't help them directly. You have to help them indirectly, which is the way you've done it. So that's perfect.
So, shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned when we first started talking during this session, you mentioned that you've been busy. Tell us about that. What, again, I realize what you're dealing with now after having talked to you for a few minutes, but share a little bit about what your work looks like and how you've been busy in this situation.
Basically, we're working on the new books, and there's a book called, there's 3 books called World Satsanga, book 1, book 2, book 3. First one's lectures, second one's are questions and answers, and they've been generated as a function of doing their World Satsanga every month for the last 10 years. And so the wonderful lady called Ula Sarmiento has been transcribing them for all those years, and it finally became obvious that we needed to create a series of books from it. So we're working on that. We're doing the artwork as well. Celia's been doing the artwork, my partner and organizer, manager, and so we've been working on that. We've got a number of consultations that have been coming through recently. I'm back into being 5 months in the future before I can finish my current backlog of work, and it keeps going. So the number of individuals who want consultations is now into the end of September. So it's I mean, I can remember Dolores Cannon having a 2-year waiting list, and I've got what's basically now 5-month waiting list. She had 2 years waiting list. So there's that as well, and there's also the workshops we're working on. We're working on the healing workshops and the traversing the frequencies workshops, and there's plans to go back to Switzerland and Slovenia and definitely China and definitely India. I mean, India. These people were the spiritual epicenter of the world, a few decades ago, but they've been consumed by materialism, and they're also, and so they're starting to want to have, you know, lots of teaching as well, lots of guidance as well. And I'm linked in with um, a university called Quantum Life University, which is basically works with holistic healing, holistic training, thought processes, reprogramming of ourselves to become more spiritually aware. And so I've been working with those for a few years. Obviously, before pandemic, I've been over a number of times, but recently we've been doing lots of work in different city-based locations such as Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Vikramabad, Delhi, Bangalore, Goa. There's lots of different places we've been working with. So that's kicking off again. And the healing workshops, we're looking, they're becoming more online. But the end part, the final part, which is an advanced series of modalities that teach, that has to be in China. That's working well as well. And that's becoming worldwide. People are joining in from all over the world. It's fantastic. And we've also got lots of support from two individuals in China. One's a very well known and highly renowned medium. And the other one is a professor in one of the universities in Beijing who is basically researching into metaphysics, and he's really interested in what we're doing. So we're linking with them as well. The objective is to try to create almost like a governing body for spiritual healing modalities, so that we don't get, you know, basically nonsense being taught. So we're creating that. We're creating a very high quality workshop for our students, and it'll be opening up to you know, validate other the modalities as well. And on top of that, I've just got the very fledgling college for healing, teaching healing in the UK, approved by the Complementary Medical Association, and along with the workshops themselves. And nice for the ego, I've been awarded a fellowship as well, which is fantastic.
Congratulations.
But it gives the workshops validity, really, that I've become a fellow of the Complementary Medical Association. They've approved the college and the workshop content as well. So it's all good stuff. So although it's good for the ego, it's actually good to have the work that we're doing validated and have it, shall we say, recommended from an academic perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The validation, it brings credibility to those folks who are kind of on the fence, right? I think, and they feel like maybe they need to take these sorts of actions, but you know, their egos and the media and everybody else is always chipping away, like trying to almost create like a laughter at this sort of movement among some people.
Well, it does, but at the end of the day, if we can provide a recognizable framework that the work that we're doing, not just us, I mean, other people as well are doing it, that are also getting recognized by these governing bodies. But there's only one governing body in the UK, which is the Complementary Medical Association, that's got any longevity and credibility. But it's part of a framework, and if you've got a framework that people can relate to, because it is a framework, it's therefore got structure and it's therefore got physicality, so to speak, even though it's, you know, it's academic. It allows people to think, right, because this is available on through me going through a governing body, and it's been approved, therefore it must be good, rather than somebody just doing it from their front room, for example. So it does help in the material world to have some association with it, because we are existing in the material world right now, and to be able to exist and function in the material world, we have to sort of have some sort of anchor or some sort of grounding that shows that, you know, this is part of a bigger sort of body of knowledge or governance, and therefore it's got validity, and therefore, you know, it's going to be beneficial to me if I participate on it. And this is how universities were created, basically.
Well, totally. I mean, the material dimension of this is that, and I've often wondered, like, what's taking them so long to figure this out? Because even, Nikolai Tesla, he talked about energy, frequency, and vibration. If you want to understand the universe, think in those terms. And, it's what better scientist, from a material standpoint to kind of look at for that. But it's often so ignored from the material side, that those realities of, if everything's energy, frequency, and vibration, then the thoughts and prayers are more important than anything, right? In terms of, back to the analogy, the conversation we were having positive thoughts, prayers, if you're into religion, and so forth. But it seems to be, I guess I'm encouraged that the material world is finding and providing validation to you in some of the work that you're doing, because of this.
Well, it's also interesting that it is happening because everything has its time and place, so to speak. And if it's part of the overall plan for us as a civilization of incarnate souls in this particular location within the multiverse, then it must be necessary. And if it wasn't necessary, it wouldn't be allowed to exist. So if you think about there's things that have happened, there's doors that have opened instantaneously that previously would have been difficult, if not impossible, to do. So what I'm noticing is that when we go with the certain flow of the universe, so to speak, or the multiverse, if you want to think bigger, and we work with that, but we don't sort of get complacent about, the door's not open yet, I won't do anything. We prepare for the door being opened, so that when the door's open, you can go through the next door, and then go through the next door, then go through the next door. That's when things work seamlessly. And so when we try too hard, we try to open the door before the key's available to open the door, or the person's got the key, to open the door. But if we work in a way where we feel, our intuition tells us that this is going to happen at some time, prepare for it, and then when it does happen, we are ready for it, and we can move through seamlessly. And that's the way to work. So rather than being complacent and thinking, oh well, it's not the right time now, I won't do anything for it, prepare for when the time is right, and then you'll be ready to run.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Very hopeful too, when you think about it that way, right? Which I think is part of the key, is to stay on that positive side and not not get drug into the negativity and the doubt and the frustration and the lack of patience.
Well, the doubt is, I'm going to do all this work, it's going to be for nothing. Doing the work in itself is good for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
When that work comes online is a matter of when the time is right for it, so to speak. The right event space, the right reality, the right number of individuals are available, the right thought process is there. And I've experienced them. And I look back at my life, I've experienced this quite a lot, actually. There's things that have happened that I think, well, I wouldn't have been able to do this, a few years ago, and now I can do it easily. It's just that we have to be aware that everything has its time and place, and we have to be able to, dare I use the word, take advantage of or monopolize upon that potential that is going to be there. Because if you have a feeling that it's going to be there, then it will be there. So be prepared, and don't worry about whether you think you're going to be doing lots of work for nothing, because the work will be beneficial. It'll still be in the energies, but it might not be necessary to have it ready, available for 10 years' time. But if you have got it available, that's great. I mean, the amount of work I've done in the past that's just sat in drawers, for example, with some of the texts that I've written, that all of a sudden it's come out and it's been useful. And you think, wow, that literally has sat there for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I've done that now, and it's done and dusted. And then all of a sudden it becomes relevant. You think, oh, that's interesting. Right. So you've not lost. So it's never lost. It's always it's like energy. Energy is never lost. It's
Right.
always converted into another energy with another frequency, and that's the way we have to think about what we do and how we work. Is that just because you're doing it now doesn't mean it's not going to be needed later. If it's not needed now, it probably will be needed later. So it's like that tool in the toolbox that you buy in the hardware store. You think, I bought that, but what have I bought it for? I'm not going to use that. And all of a sudden, there's something happens in the house, and you think, I need that tool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, totally.
that's the same. That's the same with everything. It's just thinking positive about what you're doing. Nothing goes to waste. Everything is required. Even if you don't do it yourself, somebody takes that information onwards and moves forwards. That's when it's necessary. That's when it works. We've got lots of examples of the doors being open at the right time. Lots of examples.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we all do if we really stop to think about it. So, a little shifting gears a little bit, for those of our listeners who are, maybe this is the first time listening to this program with you, one of your sessions that you've done with us, Guy is very in tune. And would you call it channeling? Is that the right way to talk about what you do, Guy?
Yeah, I call it channeling information. You could call it spiritual streaming if you want to, mediumship. There's all sorts of different ways to describe the same thing. Basically, it's detaching from the influences of the environment around us, the physical influences, which is obviously sound and sight and communication, other interactions, and creating a condition where we have a higher frequency, and therefore we can communicate with other aspects of our environment that is only available to those who are in a higher frequency. Just because we can see what we call, or what most people call, the three-dimensional environment, which is a construct of three frequencies together as a composite, doesn't mean there's nothing else that exists above that. Well, we know that there is now, because we know there's radio waves, there's sort of microwave radiation, and we can use those. There's X-rays, we can use those. There's all sorts of other
light waves, even
light waves. There's things above our five senses that we can now detect with our machines. It doesn't mean to say that that's all. There's much more, significantly higher frequencies that are out there that contain lots more data. So, there are human beings who have evolved to the point where they've jumped from one frequency to the next frequency. They've moved into the fourth frequency level. We can't see them with our physical eyes, but they're there, and they interact with others of that frequency, because they've also moved up the frequencies, but they can interact with us should they desire to do so. So anything that we see basically in the physical universe that is there is just really in the first three frequencies. There's much more content in the physical universe in the frequencies above the third up to the 12th frequency. So, and the frequencies that I'm talking about are much higher than the frequencies we call radio, or microwave radiation, all these sorts of things, even gravity. It's well above that.
So when you're doing this, I'm assuming you maybe go into a meditation state at that point when you're trying to connect into those frequencies, or does it just come to you?
In the early days, it was very hard, very, very hard. It took me at least half an hour to get to a certain level to be able to communicate with any entities that were disincarnate, and then eventually it became very easy. I'm connected all the time now, so I tend to use my connectivity, which we could also call intuition if you want to. Cosmic consciousness, the Hindus call it. It's all the same thing, where I can connect by just trusting the connection is still there. And so I then connect and I get information down from different entities if I want to, or just the knowledge that's there, because the multiversal environment is a massive repository of knowledge based upon interaction, creativity, experience, learning, and evolving that other souls in other body types who may or may not have incarnated into those body types, or maybe still may have stayed in the energies and therefore not incarnated, have created this as a function of their own interaction with whatever they've interacted with, and circumstances they may have created in whatever environment they've got. So connecting with that means that everything that we think is going to happen has already happened, because time doesn't exist as such, but events do exist, or event spaces exist, but they all exist in the same space. So if you understand that, then you can connect to everything concurrently. And that's why certain mediums can, dare I say, predict the future. They just basically access an event space that is what would be considered from a linear perspective to be our future, but is actually another part of the now. Mm-hmm. And so it's doing that, but there's also entities who share information as well, and let's connecting with those. That's what channeling is, or mediumship. Yeah.
Do you? I mean, getting into the material dimension of this, do you hear a voice? Do you just have thoughts that appear and you need to write them down, or how does it literally come to you?
There's three main modalities. There's clairaudience, or spiritual hearing; clairvoyance, which is spiritual seeing in your mind's eye, your perceptual vision; and there's clairsentience, which is your intuition, basically, or cosmic consciousness. And I get information in all those three. Sometimes it's just the hearing, sometimes it's the seeing, sometimes it's knowingness, which is the intuition side, or the clairsentient side. But I can get it all three in one go, or just in one of those particular modalities, or a combination of two of them, for example, depending upon how I'm receiving the information, or what the information is. Sometimes the concepts are so difficult that anything that I would use to translate it, and by that I mean any of my experiences over the years I've been incarnating this particular body. If I can't translate it, I just have this knowingness, and then eventually there may be some imagery that comes with it that might, oh, that's an example of how what that is. I can see that, or I can hear something that gives me an example, or just continue with the knowingness for a bit. So that's how it comes to me. Some people just only pick up like tingling in their hands, so they get like a yes no answer, or the hairs in the back of their neck stand up. Or they use pendulums for a yes and no answer, for example, and that's how they interact with the greater reality, by getting yes no answers. But there's many people who get the clairaudience, or clairvoyance, or clairsentience, predominantly focused on one of those. They continue to focus on it and trust it, then that opens up their frequencies to higher frequencies, and they can start to get access to the other functions as well.
So one of the things, and thank you for sharing that. I think that'll be helpful to a lot of listeners. One of the things that got my attention when we even before we first met, I read one of your early books, The Origin Speaks, I believe, is the one that I read, and it really got my attention. And I'm just wondering if have you had any interactions recently, or since we last spoke, with any, the source entity or origin, if there's anything you could share that with our listeners that just something that may have happened or you may have picked up in recently.
I'm currently writing a book called Beyond the Origin, which is not beyond the origin per se. It's beyond the current knowledge of the origin, and understanding how the origin's evolving, and not just interacting with it in its current structural level, because it's sentience basically within the structure of energy. But in the Origin Speaks, I understood that the structure was that there was 12 levels of structure and some substructure in between that. Since then, I've understood that actually there's 12 of these 12 levels. So there's 12 groups of 12 levels, and that is what the origin strives to populate with its volume of sentience. It wants to grow its volume of sentience, and in doing so, it wants to grow its quality of evolutionary content as well as a result of it. And also increase the density of its sentience. There's volume of sentience and density of sentience, and not just evolution, but the depth of evolution, which is the quality of evolution. and and populate all these different structural levels. And so the beyond the origin bit is going beyond the first group of 12, really, and communicating with the origin in its different stages of evolution, because using event space, you can communicate with the origin well into its future, so to speak. It's a bit like me communicating with me when I'm 80, or me when I'm 4 communicating with me now. I know much more now as a 62-year-old than I did when I was 4. But and so that's the difficulty sometimes, communicating with the origin now, and then finding I'm communicating with another version of the origin which is much more evolved, because it's expanded into these different areas. And then you go to the point where you find out that the origin wants to move beyond structure into nothingness, and that's what I'm working on now.
So that's your new book, you say, that you're working on?
It's what I'm working on now. It's called Beyond the Origin, an event space odyssey. That's the title and subtitle to it. The latest published book is called the Uncreated Creations, and that is available right now. it's I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe that it's been on pre-order for a couple of months now, but physical copies are being available, are available now. Kindle version's been available for a couple of months, but the physical copies are available now, and I know that because my copies are coming.
Oh, good. Tell us a little bit about that. You said it's called the Om.
It's called the Om, the Uncreated Creations. Well, the Om are a race. I have difficulty in calling them a race, but basically they're a group of individual units of sentience that were created as a function of the recycling of the energies and sentience that the origin used to try to recreate itself when it was to accelerate its own evolution, before it eventually created the source entities. If you didn't know what it was itself, how can you create yourself when you don't know what you are? It's become very obvious now that there's no way that the origin was going to recreate itself, because it's significantly, it's beyond infinitely bigger. Let's put it that way than it is now in terms of what I communicate with. So in creating smaller individualized units of sentience and giving them a reason to be, this is why you've been created, to help me understand me by investigating me, and basically that's what we're doing on behalf of our creator, our source, is really how the origin is progressing by creating these source entities. But moving beyond, understanding beyond that is quite amazing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think
and the Om, getting back to the Om bit, the Om were created as a function of the reuse of the energies and the sentience from that primary division of sentience to create 12 origins which failed, to create these smaller individualized units of sentience, the source entities. But because there was a quite a significant amount of sentience that remained as origin sentience that was being individualized into the source entity volume of sentience, didn't want to be. It's like oil and water, it just split. You had a very small group of these other entities that were sort of uncreated. They were part of a creation but became uncreated, and in doing so they maintain their originness, so to speak, as sentience, but they were sentience without energy. Although they can occupy energy to be able to interact with various different environments, but they tend to stay well outside of the structure associated with source entities. They're in that group of 12 levels of structure, the first group of 12 levels of structure that the origin currently exists within. So if you want to call them smaller units of origin, you can do, but basically they're a very rare and small sentience commodity within the origin, basically, that really is origin and origin sentience, but but didn't do what it was supposed to do, which is become source entities, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about them. It's about them, and a bit more knowledge about who and what we are, knowledge about myself as well. It's quite a deep reaching book. We talk about all sorts of things, not just about the Om, but about things like theoretical physics and quantum computing and all those sorts of different things that we're looking at. And it's one of the things that came out of the Om book was that from a physical perspective, everything on a quantum level is everything. It's just that the focus makes it into a pen. So it's just the focus of what we wanted to be creates the focus of what the quantum level is and becomes. But everything is in quantum latency. It can be everything else. It's just that our focus makes it be this particular instant.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of teleportation, quantum teleportation, is actually just copying. It's not actually teleportation, because teleportation is the change of focus of one thing from one location to another location as a function of sentience, not actually using this idea of quantum components being linked together. That's part of it, but it's a much higher level of understanding. And I'd love to be able to talk to some theoretical physicists about it, because I'm sure that they are starting to think along the lines of metaphysics now, rather than just mainstream physics and theoretical physics. Theoretical physics can go anywhere if they allow themselves to.
Well, yeah, the quantum nature of physics is the most interesting piece of all physics, right? That's
right. Yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, but again, the quantum level goes right down to the first building block, which is the Anu, which metaphysics discovered. Yogis discovered thousands of years ago. I mean, Besant and Leadbetter, who were Western yogis in the 19th century, they also independently through meditation observed the form of what the Anu is. That's like 6 levels of quantum below the atom. So that's the very first stage of the manifestation of physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the start. That's the start point.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the number 12. You've mentioned that a couple of times, and that number comes up in a lot of things that I research. What is it about the number 12?
It's a bit of a clue, really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Basically, it seems to be a part of the rudimental structure of the origin. Everything is a function of 12. There's 12 levels of structure within the first group of 12. It's just everything seems to be based upon 12. Mm-hmm. Everything increases in finitude by the power of 12. So when we move into, for example, the next frequency, the content that's capable of being stored in that frequency level, the physical content, increases by the power of 12. So when you go beyond the physical universe into the next physical universe, the next universe, which is the 13th frequency, which is the first frequency of the first subdimensional component of the second full dimension, not 3 dimensions that mankind thinks about, which is basically just a metric for volume, and what about real dimensions? Mm-hmm. The content of the universe, the physical universe at that point, increases again by the power of 12. And the next universe again increases by the power of 12. The next universe again increases by the power of 12. So you start to move that through all the different levels of structure, which is the origin, and it's just, you know, we can't even conceive how big it is.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely a clue. The number appears all over the place.
It does. It's a clue to everything.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think somewhere, I might be wrong there. So if I'm wrong, I'll forgive, please forgive me. But I think somewhere there's even 12 different types of DNA. There's a potential to have a group of 12 to create the human body. There's even a potential of 12 different types of RNA. There might even be more groups of 12 of groups of 12. You know, so there's and that's just on the physical side.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I know we're kind of running up at the end of our time together, and I want to be respectful of your time. It's always great to catch up with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us and with our audience. One of the things I just wanted to kind of recap and bring this all together is, you know, advice for our audience and for listeners out there. You know, from what I've taken away here, it's stay positive and keep meditating, keep taking the time to have quiet time and meditate or pray or whatever it may be that works for you. What else would you share with our audience, just kind of in some closing comments, in order to keep the positive momentum going, or to maybe reestablish the positive momentum that we once had?
Keep good company. Gravitate around those who have the same thought processes as yourselves, but also allow them to have their thought processes, or the variations upon their thought process. Rule nothing out, accept everything as being a potential. That way we don't go into arguments.
That's fantastic. It's great. It seems so simple when you say it that way.
Simple words are hard to achieve usually.
Indeed they are. Well, on that note, I will let you go, and thank you, Guy Needler, for all your time and everything that you're doing. And I always get a good feel when I talk to you. So thank you very much for sharing that with me, and also with our listeners.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for listeners for listening in. You, in your own way, are helping us maintain the frequencies from going lower than they are. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch, Guy, and best of luck with your new book. And I'll definitely have to check out the Om soon. And I look forward to your new one as well.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Guys, as always, this episode is brought to you by Packed with Life Tea. You know, I always talk about how much I love iced tea, and Packed with Life tastes fantastic. And I don't add any sweetener or anything like that. Just great tasting iced tea, packed with organic adaptogens, including the 4 key mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi. Of course, it tastes great as hot tea as well, if that's your thing. And some people like to add a little bit of honey. But either way, no matter how you like your tea, you're going to love this tea, and it will boost your immune system, brain, lungs, and gut. That's why it's Packed with Life. So get yours today at packedwithlife.com. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Ashley on Nothing But the Truth for a Better You and Me.